Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to a brand new weekly show I am launching today, the Movies TV Mad Weekly, where we take a look back at the week's talking point in entertainment. And we're launching this brand new show, of course, by starting off with DC. Of course we are. You would want nothing less from me. So let's continue our conversation from yesterday. It was revealed on the day we had the Warner Brothers Discovery up front that David Zaslav has indeed cancelled Wonder Twins. Let's talk about his motivations for doing so. Don't forget, he could have easily reduced the budget, kept it on HBO Max, or turned it into a TV series, kept it on HBO Max, moved it to the theatrical system. But he didn't do that. Why? Because he knows there's no value, no gain, no financial uplift to a Wonder Twins movie or TV show at this point. For the past year or two, Walter Hamada and Toby Emmerich have been, announcing DC projects for fun. They're trying to create a platform. I understand that element of their thinking, but they haven't even shown the public the Flash movie, the launch pad for this brand new platform. So how can you start launching all these projects when you haven't even shown the public this movie, which is kind of the pilot, the kind of launching pad for the brand new DC Extended Universe, a rebooted version of the franchise that started off with Man of Steel in 2013. So they're acting like they're Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, but they haven't earned the right to do so. And David Zaslav understands that. And he understands there's no point to a Wonder Twins movie at this point. A Wonder Twins movie is something that you launch when you have a successful platform with brand recognition and brand loyalty. DC live action hasn't had that. Probably hasn't ever had that. Although we've had so many great DC individual movies in the past, it's not there right now. So David Zaslav has another idea. David Zaslav wants to launch bigger characters, bigger projects at first. What he's trying to do is uplift the theatrical model. And it's very different over at Disney and Marvel Studios. Because they're so successful, they decided to extend the Marvel Cinematic Universe to streaming and Disney+. But they have never spent $75 million on anything Marvel on Disney+. They wouldn't do that because even though they understand the streaming model is important and there's money to be made and it kind of is the future, but again, it kind of isn't the future of movies. It's the future of television. So what you've seen over at Disney+ with the Marvel stuff is very cheap series. So WandaVision looked slightly more expensive than the other shows that we've had. Why do you think we had a Moon Knight series when you barely saw Moon Knight? Because it's financial. They probably spend 20, 30 million a show. And that doesn't sound like a lot of money in terms of making something, but they get away with it. That's why Falcon and the Winter Soldier wasn't very epic and wasn't the show we imagined it to be. Now, if we had a Falcon and a Winter Soldier movie with around 100, 200 million budget, it would have been awesome. It would have been like maybe Captain America and the Winter Soldier or something like that. But they didn't have the money. So they had to lessen their ambitions. So that's what they're doing. But they're allowed to do that. They can do that because they've got a successful platform with brand recognition and brand loyalty. People will watch anything with the Marvel insignia logo on it. That's the difference. DC isn't there yet. You have to create a platform to have a platform. And David Zaslav understands that. And so people keep on predicting in hope rather than in expectation of what David Zaslav's going to do with the DC live action universe. Some of you out there believe because it's what you want, he's going to restore the Snyderverse. I have no confidence in that. I would like him to do that as a fan. I'll tell you as a business person and as a person in entertainment what I would do, and I've already told you, but I'll reiterate it. But as a fan, I want to see Cavill again. I want to see the Snyderverse restored. And I mean, a few months ago, I was so excited for this Walter Hamada reboot, but now I'm not. And I now believe, and I've changed my mind, and I'm like a woman, I'm allowed to change my mind, right? And I change my mind and my opinions about stuff quite often, and I'm sure you've noticed that. You probably think that makes me inconsistent. No, it makes me honest. I was excited for the Hamadaverse. Since the delay of these movies and what's happened with Ezra and everything else, I'm not so excited because I now understand the issues within the Hamadaverse. They're trying to create an illusion of a successful franchise when they haven't created that success. They haven't created that platform yet. And as I said, I'm going to reiterate to you what I would do. Even though I love Snyder and his universe, and I think that what he did was amazing, and he was leading the franchise, and it had identity and it had a vision. For me, I would scrap the entirety of the DCEU. I've told you that before. As a business person, it doesn't, I mean, if anything has brand recognition, it's the Snyderverse rather than the Hamadaverse. I agree. But when you look at the fans, and when you look at the divisive nature of conversations on social media, Twitter especially, and you see the divide, the arguments between Snyderverse fans and the Batman stans, something, I must say, my fellow Snyderverse fans started. The Batman stans were just, stanning Pattinson and Reeves, and, it felt from my point of view that Snyderverse stans, right, and I love Snyder stuff, right, but I wouldn't call myself a stan, right, started on those people because they were intimidated, they were unhappy that Ben Affleck's The Batman movie became Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson's The Batman movie. I understand your frustration, but it's not their fault. So the only way to stop all of this is to cancel it all. Now, what do you do with Reeves' universe? I mean, these are the complicated issues with it. Reeves clearly doesn't want any involvement in a shared universe, but Reeves is a great director and he's created something. It would be very dumb at this point to take down what he's doing. You'd have to take it on the chin and say, carry on doing what you're doing. Even if you want to create a brand new extended universe, it's clear that Reeves wants no involvement in that. So this is what I think that Zaslav is looking at right now. Now, where I would just take everything down, even with these 5 upcoming movies. Now, I understand they've spent money on these movies and they have to be released. But for me, these movies create a confusion with the consumer. So I would never release these movies. That would cause huge controversy, of course. I would literally just start again. I wouldn't even have given Peacemaker another season because, again, that confuses the issue. I would just start again with a brand new franchise that actually works. Snyder fans would come after me if I was the head of this franchise, and there'd still be those divisive conversations. But when I started producing great movies and a great franchise, their noise would become silent. They'd still be going for me, but no one would be listening to them because I've created a wonderful, epic DC universe. So no one's going to give a shit what they're saying. And I'm someone who loves Snyder's universe and wants to see it continue and concluded. But I understand if we continue with these conversations, the Snyderverse over the Hamadaverse, the Snyderverse over the Pattinsonverse, we got all these problems. Probably if it was me, I would probably even scrap the Batman universe, which is not going to win me any fans. But I believe we need one universe that makes sense, that people can embrace. But you'll be happy to hear this is not what Walter Hamada is planning. Because we know that Batman is getting a sequel. I'm excited for that. I'm just telling you what I would do. As someone who loves DC and wants it to be successful, I believe he will look at Joker and say, wow, that made $1 billion. Yes, Todd, let's have that sequel. Hopefully, what I'm guessing which is a Harley Quinn sequel. So he's going to continue his black label. Don't forget, Walter Hamada wouldn't allow him to continue his black label concept. Black label is something that already exists. in DC comics and graphic novels. And he wanted to bring it to live action. It was a great idea. Hamada said no, because Hamada's mind was about a central universe, about bringing in the mainstream audience. But, you know, these people's, you know, appetite is bigger than their stomachs, and they don't understand how to attract the mainstream audience. So when the public hear that we could have had a black label universe by a very, you know, prolific director and writer, and they said no to that, and they didn't even want Joker, which made over $1 billion, people start to question these people's sanity. Because Walter Hamada shouldn't actually be ahead of the DC films. He shouldn't be the president of DC films. He has no inner knowledge of DC films. When you look at what's happened since he's come, and really you can take him back to Justice League as well, which he certainly was involved in silently. So there's the issue here. So Zaslav wants to go for the stuff that's going to bring big money. I would actually make a bolder statement about Zaslav. He's not as interested as Disney are with the comic book streaming model. I believe you will have certain TV series that can be made cheaply on HBO Max, you know, via DC. But I don't think he's particularly interested in that right now. It wouldn't surprise me if you only see Peacemaker on HBO Max from the DCEU. I think the Green Lantern Corps show, scrapped. He will want an epic movie to go over to the theatrical model. And a lot of other things that have been greenlit, maybe for HBO Max, will actually end up, like Batgirl, being released theatrically. I don't think his idea for streaming is DC. I think his motivation is to merge Discovery Plus and HBO Max into a brand new named and branded streaming service, and that's the right thing to do. I think he wants to put the documentaries in there. He wants to have scripted 1-hour dramas over there. He wants to have established movies on there from the theatrical system. I don't necessarily think he wants to overload HBO Max with DC content. He believes the money and the future is cinematically, and I absolutely agree with that. There is money to be made from the streaming model and live action DC, but it's limited. There's more money to be made theatrically, and a lot of people don't understand that. So he's going to be looking at this, you know, Black Label franchise. He's going to greenlight that. He's going to sign off on that. He's already signed off on the Batman sequel. And he's been very clear about Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. So either he's going to greenlight a Superman movie, or he's going the whole hog and probably greenlight and sign off on a Holy Trinity movie, which I've discussed with you so many times. That could be something we're going for first of all. But we still have these 5 upcoming movies. And, you know, The Rock's doing his best to promote Black Adam, which I believe is going to be an amazing movie. It's actually one of the few upcoming DC movies like Batgirl. They're the only two, Black Adam and Batgirl, I have any faith in. The others I'm very concerned about. Even Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which I think will look beautiful, but I'm not sure about certain things I'm hearing about that movie. I'm still excited about that movie, but my faith goes to Black Adam and Batgirl. And, you know, as I say, The Rock is trying his best to promote his movie, even though they won't let him release a trailer to the public, to his public. That's a problem. And that tells me that Hamada is probably going to delay these movies. Forget Hamada. It's not even in his department to delay these movies. It's not up to him. It's up to the studio head. Now, the chairman of WB Pictures is Toby Emmerich. You've heard me mention his name. There's a lot of history with Toby Emmerich. You should definitely Google him. But he's made a lot of mistakes. I don't think he's running anything at Warner Brothers Pictures anymore. I think Zaslav has rolled up his sleeve as the CEO of the newly formed Warner Brothers Discovery and said, I'm in charge now. I'm making these decisions. David Zaslav went on stage on Wednesday's Warner Brothers Discovery up front and said, the future for DC is bright, and kind of said nothing else. But what is that future? Well, it's clearly not the multiverse strategy or the Hamadaverse. It's obviously something else. Now, we can sit here and guess his plans and what he's going to do. But as I said on the top of the show, we really don't know if he's restoring the Snyderverse, bringing back Cavill, but we do know he wants Superman in the big screen, and he wants Wonder Woman on the big screen, and he wants Batman on the big screen. We're definitely getting Batman, the sequel, from Matt Reeves, which is very exciting. Wonder Woman 3, we keep on hearing things. I think that will be re-established into probably a Holy Trinity movie, but we'll wait and see. So we know he wants Superman, first and foremost, on the big screen. That will be the next big announcement. I don't expect any big announcements to happen anytime soon. They're clearly in the planning stages, but I still believe these 5 upcoming movies will be delayed till next year. Again, I could be wrong about that. So that's how I see David Zaslav and his plans. He was right to cancel Wonder Twins, to prioritize the theatrical DC market over the streaming market. We've seen what's happened to Marvel. They have overstretched themselves with the D+ Marvel shows. They look cheap, average, and we've seen what's happened with the trailer for She-Hulk. People are massacring it, calling it Shrek. It's unkind, and it doesn't matter how much brand recognition and brand loyalty your franchise has, and the MCU absolutely has that. They've broken, trailer viewing records with She-Hulk. They will, because people will always be intrigued and excited about the next MCU Marvel Studios project. But in the end, they're made fun of for not having the quality they need to have. And in the end, this will hurt Feige. Feige had respect in phase 1, in phase 2, and in most of phase 3. But you could see nearer to the end of phase 3, there was becoming a problem. Not in quality, but in the way they were going after things. And people started calling it the MCU. And this is where we are now. So it's clear David Zaslav is planning to build something very special. And I support what he's doing, and I believe in what he's doing. I've seen too much from him already not to believe in him. He's cancelled the CW, basically. He's put it on the market. We've seen what's going on. 3 DC Arrowverse shows only next year. He's got a vision for one franchise. But I think first and foremost, I think he's going to go for the things that guarantee buck. Superman will bring in buck. Now, what for the Snyderverse? What's going to happen there? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do with that. Because the Snyderverse certainly has a financial uplift to it. But with him saying he wasn't willing to spend $75 million on a Wonder Twins movie, that may put pay to the Snyderverse streaming, restoring the Snyderverse and its streaming on HBO Max. The only way he's going to bring the Snyderverse back is if he releases that stuff in movie theatres and it uplifts the theatrical system. Is there a chance of that? Of course there is. Of course there's a chance of restoring the Snyderverse. There is money to be made, but let's be clear. It's not the kind of money that they're really after. But as I say, just for Zack to finish what he was doing, yes, there's money to be made there. And there's certainly more brand loyalty in that franchise than the Hamadaverse. Does that mean he's definitely restoring the Snyderverse? No. Keep fighting and let's see what happens. This is the Movies TV Mad Weekly, and right now we move on from our DC conversation and talk about the MCU. So yesterday it was announced that they're bringing back Daredevil, but this time instead of it being on Netflix, it's going to be on Disney+. I have to ask the question, why not a Daredevil movie starring Charlie Cox? Why another streaming show? Another streaming show that's going to be cheap, that's not going to have the investment that Netflix invested in it. That's for sure. And it will lack quality. Now, there are kind of elements of R-ratedness to Daredevil in the comics, but also there's lighter versions of Daredevil as well. So there are ways of doing this, but I have no trust in Disney and Marvel Studios. Now, the first season on Netflix was written and produced and showrun by Stephen S. Denine. If you don't know who Stephen is, He actually was a producer and a writer on Smallville from around season 5, 6. I think he stayed around until the end of season 7. A very talented writer. He made Daredevil season 1 compelling viewing. It was amazing. For me personally, it didn't have that consistency in season 2, 3 or 4. You know, Daredevil stands say to me, it did, and it's the best comic book show ever made. I couldn't agree less. It doesn't have the consistency of Smallville. Stephen S. DeKnight was there for 1 year for Daredevil Netflix, and it was great and it worked, but I felt like it was missing something after Stephen left. And I mean, the kind of showrunners they're bringing in for the D+ version don't fill me with any great confidence. You see, Disney and a lot of these companies now are obsessed with streaming. Now, they took the pandemic and tried to take advantage and uplift their streaming models. We saw what Scarlett Johansson did when they made Black Widow day and date. She was very upset because it hurt the theatrical model and it hurt the movie's box office. Not that it was a great movie, but it certainly would have uplifted in the box office a lot more than it did. That failed because people, the old school people, you know, you could call Scarlett Johansson old school thinking, where they're trying to protect the theatrical model. We should be getting an awesome, epic Daredevil movie starring Charlie Cox, but we're not going to get that. We're going to get a cheap, badly written mini Daredevil series on Disney+. You will see what they do with material that's kind of more towards Marvel adults than children. Deadpool 3 is a fine example. I've been predicting disaster for this film because with Fox, before it went to Disney, Ryan Reynolds had the freedom to do anything, you know, say any swear word, do anything. I think he's going to be limited here. It will be interesting what happens there. So I have not much interest in Deadpool Part 3. I think the first movie is good. I think the second movie is not as good as the first one, but still very good, and I really enjoyed it. I don't have any faith in Disney making original, good content. They are really shying away from the theatrical system. Now, Zaslav's come in and he said, we're going to uplift the theatrical system. I'm happy about that. That's really, really good news. But look, did you ever think you'd see the day where you'd get used to watching Star Wars on television instead of films? When was The Rise of Skywalker released? 2019, 2018, something like that. 2019, I think. So what, it's been nearly 3 years since we've had a Star Wars movie, and we're getting Taika Waititi to write and direct the Star Wars movie. And let's move on to Daredevil, but on the subject of Disney and how creatively bankrupt they are. So they had a Disney up front, and Kathleen Kennedy said that they really need to move on from the Skywalker saga. Let's look at evidence of what she's saying. So we had a sequel trilogy, which is connected to the Skywalker saga. We have The Mandalorian, that's had one huge cameo from Luke Skywalker. A Boba Fett show, again, that had a huge cameo with Luke Skywalker. We've had Rogue One, which is, if you like it or not, connected to the Skywalker saga. Solo, that character is connected to the Skywalker saga. I mean, it's all there. So what should they have done? Now, I respect Kathleen Kennedy in the sense of admitting that they've made mistakes, but how could they have made this brand new Disney Star Wars so much better? The sequel trilogy should have been faithful to George's sequel trilogy, or they should have started independently on their own all over again, telling a story of new worlds, new planets. It's not going to feel, you've got to kind of make that feel still like Star Wars, but that there's new worlds here and there's new stories to tell. If you look at the fan fiction and the graphic novels, it's all there. It's not rocket science. So hopefully that's what Taika Waititi is attempting to do. And this is what they should have done, right? If you're not going to be faithful to George's sequel trilogy vision, forget it. Or allow J.J. Abrams to make a great trilogy. But you didn't do that because their motivations are political rather than creating great platforms. They don't understand the way that they have their political commentary. It doesn't help them making money, and they're trying to tap into a new way of doing it. Well, Hollywood has always been extreme left, but the way they made their points, you didn't even notice it, but the points were there, and they were in your head, and you understood what they were trying to say. Falling Down, starring Michael Douglas, is commentary on toxic masculinity. A great movie, right? I bet you didn't know that. No, you wasn't supposed to know it, but it makes its point. It makes its statement about toxic masculinity without you actually knowing they're getting at you, a man. So that's great. They make their statements, but we don't know they're making their statements, and they still made a lot of money. It's a great movie. Everyone's happy. Now, let's be clear here. Extreme left commentary and identity politics is a rich person's statement, an ideology. Because in the real world, the real things we should be commentating about is world hunger, child poverty. There's so many things, Remember Sir Bob Geldof doing a huge concert and feeding the third world? That's a celebrity I can look up to. These people are complaining about things that wealthy people complain about. Things that mean nothing, that won't change the world. But they've always done it. They have no interest in helping you feed your children, feed your families. They have no sympathy for you. And, I'll talk about Margot Robbie very shortly. So these are the mistakes that Kathleen Kennedy and Star Wars has made. For me, personally, they should have made an epic, awesome sequel trilogy, right? With George Lucas writing it and Steven Spielberg directing those 3 films. Lucas wanted Spielberg to direct The Last Jedi, but there were political issues why that couldn't happen within Hollywood, and it all had to do with Lucas never his opening credit crawl. The Hollywood Institutes never liked that. So there was an issue with that. And so imagine George Lucas's written sequel trilogy directed by Steven Spielberg. It would have been a big hit. And then that could have been it. The end of the Skywalker saga. 9 episodes. The conclusion. Done properly by the father of Star Wars, George Lucas. But Iger betrayed Lucas, and it was never going to happen. So if you're not going to take up George's concepts, start again. Do something new. But they were scared. They just wanted to make easy money. And when it's just about money, and of course they are a business, but when it's just about money and not the creative element, this is what you get. And this is where the mistakes are. Also, at the Disney upfronts, Kathleen Kennedy said there's no Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. They'll never make another Indiana Jones movie without Harrison Ford. I don't actually agree with this. I believe that an adventurer, going out there and, doing these fun movies, there's always going to be a place in cinema for that. But if you've got to do it respectfully and properly, you have Chris Pratt, who would be an amazing brand new Indiana Jones. Just continue the adventures. Just call him Indiana Jones. Don't create a son for him. He's Indiana Jones now, right? Josh Holloway, a few years ago from Lost, who plays Sawyer in Lost, would have been a great Indiana Jones. I called it. They never did it. Big mistake. And what you do is you just continue. It's the next adventure where a brand new actor is Indy, right? And a lot of people will complain at first, but if you pick the right actor and you actually do it properly, there's no problem. We should live in an era where we've got creatively good people to continue Back to the Future in a part 4 in a new adventure, right? And it's just the next Marty and Doc adventure. You just use brand new actors written properly. But because of their extremist propaganda, this is never going to happen. Their extremism comes before the creative and entertainment element, and that is the problem. Margot Robbie is an Australian actress who started off in little Australian programs and soap operas. She came to prominence in the Australian television soap, long-running soap, which is about to end, by the way, very sadly, Neighbours. Then she trottled off to Hollywood and she started making a lot of films. If you notice, a lot of her films, she's in bikinis, she's in her underwear. She basically made herself into an object. She allowed herself to be used as an object to get up the Hollywood ladder. So her career really progressed well and she was doing great movies. Then she was in David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie. Again, she was a little bit of a sexual object, and I know that she didn't like that. I don't think it's the same thing in David Ayer's cut of the movie, The Ayer Cut, but certainly what they did to her wasn't very nice. It's from that moment onwards where she became just another SJW, but there's a difference between Margot Robbie and the other SJWs. Margot's very quiet about it. She doesn't go on and on about it, but she's obsessed with it. That's why she created a production company called Lucky Chap. Do you get it? Lucky Chap, talking about, toxic masculinity. That's the title of her studio. So first of all, she tried to use her politics with her Harley Quinn character. She was under the impression that the first Suicide Squad made nearly $800 million at the global box office because of her character, Harley Quinn, who's a very popular character. She was wrong because she messed up. She messed up Birds of Prey because she was leading the narrative so much that it was a flop at the global box office. And then she was in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Again, she dictated certain elements for her character. James Gunn bent the knee to Margot Robbie. And James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, despite being successful on streaming, didn't do very well in movie theatres. Whatever reason that is, they're the facts right now. So she is not able to uplift movies like she thinks she is. Now she's doing a Pirates of the Caribbean reboot with her Lucky Chap production companies. Yesterday it was announced she's doing an Ocean's prequel. She's doing it all. She's doing a feminist Barbie movie. Now, we've heard a lot of things about this Barbie movie. We're going to have a white version of Ken. We're going to have Ncuti Gatwa, who's actually the next Doctor Who. I'll talk about that slightly later on. As a black version of Ken. I don't have any issues with this, but I think it's really funny that she's making a feminist Barbie movie about a character that nobody cares about any longer. But she's been smart this time. She's using a really respected director and actors. So even if you don't care about Barbie, you may go to see this out of intrigue and interest. But it is an SJW shit show, and that's what this movie's going to be. So you can see the projects that she's doing. Apart from Barbie, right, she's hitting franchises that were led by men. She's trying to make her point. But as I say, Margot isn't Brie Larson. She's very quiet about her hatred for men. As far as I know, she's actually with a man, right? They hate men, right? But they're still with men. They still talk to their brothers. The irony in all of this is really funny that they associate themselves with men, but they hate men in their politics at the same time. Imagine being Margot Robbie, a talented actress, and doing this just out of political agenda. You could have had a great career, right? You sacrificed, yourself in the early stages to be in bikinis and underwear. You made yourself a bit of a sex symbol so you could progress up the Hollywood ladder, and well done to you, because it is the only way for women to do it, unfortunately, which is wrong. I understand where you're coming from, but what you're doing is you're flushing your career down the toilet. And finally today, let's talk about my favourite subject at this moment in time, and that's Doctor Who. So last year it was announced that Russell T Davies would return as showrunner. Let me just explain to you, I love Russell T Davies. He's my absolute inspiration as a creative. He's amazing, and I was so happy that he returned. So 2 weeks ago this Sunday, Ncuti Gatwa was announced as the brand new Doctor. Apparently so. So that's what we've been told. But then a week later, David Tennant and Catherine Tate were announced as returning to Doctor Who. We think the 60th anniversary special, but things are not exactly that straightforward. We really don't know what's going on. So, what is going on? So, we've seen a lot of outside set pics of Catherine Tate and David Tennant doing their stuff. So, we've seen Bernard Cribbins return as Donna's grandfather. We've seen the whole family. We've seen Donna's husband. He's a taxi driver. That's interesting as well. And Tennant's TARDIS is the design of Jodie Whittaker's TARDIS. So that's led a lot of people to believe that Jodie Whittaker regenerates into David Tennant. Now, although that's a feasible possibility, I remember a comic relief Christmas special when Eccleston became Tennant and Rose asked David Tennant's 10th Doctor, can you change back? And he said no. So it would be inconsistent in what Russell T Davies believes, not that that would stop a writer from doing it. I don't believe Whittaker becomes Tennant, but it is a thing. You know, I'm comfortable with being wrong about it, but I don't think that's the case. We could be getting a very mini short of David Tennant's Human Metacrisis Doctor, 10th Doctor, whatever. I don't know. This could be part of a special building up to the 60th anniversary. It could be a 20-minute episode. It could just be a mini-sode. So don't forget that. But I mean, officially, he's in the 60th anniversary. That's what they're saying. But it doesn't mean it's in a feature-length 60th anniversary. So what else could be happening here? Well, I think, I mean, for me, the most realistic way of this happening is that this is on the parallel universe. Don't forget there is a Human Metacrisis Doctor living with Rose Tyler, you know, in a parallel universe. So we know there's a Doctor Who parallel universe. Russell has already introduced the multiverse by, you know, putting Rose and this Human Metacrisis Doctor in this parallel universe. This whole thing could be set in this parallel universe. So you would assume there's a version of Donna in this parallel universe, that we know there's a version of the Doctor, a Human Metacrisis Doctor, but there surely must be in this parallel universe another version of the Doctor as well. So that's interesting. Now we know that a lady of colour, a transgender actress of colour, has been cast as a character called Rose. No, this is not a recast. Stop losing your shit. Rose Tyler is still Billie Piper. Now, it looks like maybe in this world, Rose Tyler is this transgender actress or someone that maybe Donna adopted. I'm not sure about that. But I believe all this stuff is in the parallel universe that the Doctor left Rose and the Human Metacrisis Doctor in. This is how I see it. Now, on this location, we haven't seen Ncuti Gatwa. So it doesn't really make sense, does it? Some people believe that this is this year's Doctor Who Christmas special. Nothing would excite me more than for us to return to the classic Doctor Who Christmas specials. And I know that David Tennant, Matt Smith wanted that as well. Didn't agree with what Chibnall was doing. And Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat certainly didn't agree from moving away from the Christmas special. Now, when we used to get the Christmas special, you always get the Who-tubers and these idiots complaining about stuff, like they complain about Murray Gold's music or the Christmas specials. You may have got fed up of them, but it was a tradition and it was great. I enjoyed watching the Christmas Carol or the Christmas Invasion or the Runaway Bride. It's a great Doctor Who tradition and it's what we want to see. And so that's my number one theory here. Now, what about the Christmas special? Could it happen? I think we could be getting a Christmas special this year, but I don't know for sure. But this is the kind of time they used to make the Doctor Who Christmas special under the old RTD era to go out that Christmas. So it makes sense. But then to do that, then they'd have to do the actual, if there is a feature length, and this is something we don't know. We may not be getting a feature-length 60th anniversary. That's just based on assumptions. We could be getting little minisodes, but you would imagine there will be a big thing. But there's also another theory that we are getting a Series 14 before the 60th anniversary. Now, could that work? Well, let's look at it. We could be getting, the stuff they're shooting now could actually be a Christmas special, and then they could start shooting a brand new series. Now, how could that work? We're in May now. So Russell's seasons used to start around April, March or April. So we are now in May. So if you're talking about potentially a Series 14 launching next March or April, it's very, very feasible that they could, after this Christmas special, start shooting a series and be ready for next March or April. Because don't forget, it's a long time till next year. Anyway, this is feasible. Then they could do the 60th anniversary. I know that Russell wants Doctor Who front and centre. I read excerpts in a video here on Movies TV Mad a couple of days ago where he talks about a Doctor Who channel, an 11th and 10th Doctor 10-part series, and the Nyssa Adventures. He was talking about a lot of stuff. So Russell has huge ambitions. It could be what we're seeing in this Christmas special is a launch pad for a David Tennant human meta-crisis parallel universe Doctor Who series. Now, to the people saying that Ncuti Gatwa is being disrespected by all the attention being on David and Kathy. No, because he's getting his own Series 14, which I was just talking about. So it doesn't really matter, because once that series airs, he's going to get the attention. Do you think he cares right now? He respects David Tennant. David should be getting the attention. And for people who are saying, they shouldn't bring Tennant back all the time, why not? As long as it's creative and fun and it still works. And he looks fucking amazing. He looks the same as he did back then, maybe even younger. But obviously, he's dyed his hair and things like that. I get it, but he looks amazing. And, part of David's Doctor's kind of ambience was his looks. But there was a lot deeper stuff going on with David Tennant's Doctor. And Russell T Davies made him amazing. So I'm excited for this big Doctor Who future. I'm excited for the spin-offs. And I think Ncuti Gatwa will be a great Doctor. But to the people who are trying to create a war, let me give you an example of Russell T Davies' mentality here. In Doomsday, he had the Doctor kiss a doppelganger version, a human meta-crisis Doctor that looks like David Tennant. Why did he do this? Doctor Who fans never want the Doctor kissing someone. That's just one of their rules, right? And then you've got the shippers who are desperate for Rose and David Tennant's Doctor to kiss. So what does RTD do? He creates the best of both worlds, has Rose kissing the human meta-crisis Doctor, basically a doppelganger of Tennant's Doctor. So it works. Everyone gets what they want. This is what Russell's about. He's the total opposite of propaganda merchant creatives today. He actually wants everyone to get what they want. He wants to please everyone, and this is what he's attempting to do here by casting a gay black man as the 14th Doctor, bringing Tennant back, hopefully launching him for his own spin-off in a parallel universe. So we're all going to get the different things we want and crave from Doctor Who, and he's creating an MCU-style Doctor Who universe. And I couldn't be more excited about that. This has been the Movies TV Mad Weekly with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow as we return with the all-new DCEU Daily. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.